One final game for week number 11 of this 2024 NFL season. It's a Lone Star State showdown tonight in Dallas. Cooper Rush and his Cowboys welcome in C.J. Stroud and his Texans. Houston on the road, but of course in state. 7.5-point favorite now against the Cowboys at the Star. No need to worry about where the sun is going to be, as this game will kick at 8:15 p.m. Eastern time tonight. 41.5 is that total. DRS, it's more than a touchdown spread in favor of the road team, who is getting a little bit healthier. Welcome back, Nico Collins. Of course, the story for the Cowboys is Cooper Rush starting his second consecutive game for Dallas. Just how competitive do you think this game will be tonight on a Monday?
I probably think it will be competitive from an aspect of the Houston Texans understand as long as they don't turn the football over 5 or 6 times tonight, they'll win this game and probably win it going away. So I do think we have some competitiveness. Here's the tough part about the NFL that sometimes handicappers fall into. You see a game that's so poor the week before, and you try to grade it on that. Like we saw the Denver Broncos get smoked one week, then almost beat the Chiefs, then come back and you saw smoke the Atlanta Falcons. But if we're just going off like a one-game one-off, here's the tough part. Cooper Rush was so bad last week. Sometimes you understand, like, okay, it's a backup quarterback, just didn't play well. Ben, he looked like he never played football before. And that's what you're trying to handicap into this game by saying, what is Cooper Rush's ceiling? Is it 17 completed passes and most of them dink and dunks? Is he going to be able to push the football down the field? Like, I get no vibes that they can even be competitive on offense, which from a prop perspective ruins half of the football game for me when I'm trying to line up. Like, I think Rico Dowdle can have some room on the ground. But if the Houston Texans understand that we're going to put 8 in a box and you can't throw the football, how effective can your running be? And also Cooper Rush to make that big play downfield where he couldn't even throw the football 5 yards in the flat to a wide open wide receiver last week. That's the adjustments I'm trying to make for tonight's game. So for me, just to take a contrarian view and say, let me take the Cowboys, no way, shape, or form. Like, this team just flat out stinks. And if you don't have a quarterback that can just make simple plays, how do you expect to win a football game on a Monday night against a team that's angling to win their division and is clearly a better football team than you just to start the game?
Yeah, and Donnie, I think that's really well said, what you just stated right there. Based on what we have seen out of Dallas all year, but especially last week with first Cooper Rush and then Trey Lance and 2 quarterbacks combining for less than 50 total passing yards, unless they completely flip the script, which is not anything we have seen out of this Dallas team this year. How can you even take 7.5 points with this team at home? If you're looking for something, maybe it's the fact that Houston has not been a great cover team this year. They did cover last week as a home favorite on Sunday night, despite somehow, some way losing to Detroit with 5 interceptions thrown from Jared Goff. Then the Texans also threw a bunch of interceptions, 2 in the second half. They looked good in the opening half, bad in their last 2 quarters. They have been a bad second half team each of their past 2 weeks against the New York Jets on a Thursday night, last week against Detroit. The Texans are the only team, DRS, with a winning record in the AFC South, and that's good. And Houston has swept the Indianapolis Colts, their toughest competition in that division. Again, that is good. The Texans have not looked overly impressive as we expected them to be here in this sophomore season with C.J. Stroud. Again, 4-5-1 against the spread, favored in 7 of 10 games, 2-5-1 ATS. As a favorite with C.J. Stroud, 5-9-1 against the spread since the start of last year. Again, you're not really getting, it's only 4.5 points. I'll lay it with the Texans on the road against a dreadful Dallas team. It's more than a touchdown on this Monday night.
Yeah, it is. And it should be a touchdown favorite because what is the ceiling for the Cowboys? Like, I didn't look at their team total, but I wouldn't be surprised 13.5, somewhere in that range. Like, them to get 2 touchdowns would be incredible. It's actually 16.5, which is incredible to me, showing that they really can't move the football. But understand this. If Nico Collins, who's expected to come back healthy, and they did the right thing by Nico Collins, didn't rush him back last week, gave him the extra week. before being injured on Pro Football Focus, he's the number 1 rated wide receiver. Now you step into a secondary, you can light up, which means Tank Dell, who's trying to be that number 1 wide receiver, can step back to number 2. John Metchie, who's actually having a decent season now, finally getting into the end zone for the first time in his NFL career, can step in that 3rd spot. And Dalton Schultz, who used to be a Cowboy player, now returning home to play in this game. Mixon should be fine. Like, if your go-to guy in this game, Mixon, anytime touchdown, more than 50-plus yards on the ground, which is going to put you in that realm of 60, 70, 80 yards to get his actual total. That's the way I would play this out. But it's such a tough game to grade, knowing how poor Dallas was last week with Cooper Rush, expecting them to be more efficient this week. I don't see it.
We'll talk more about it when Hour 3 starts here next. Live right here on the Early Line on Sports Grid. It's the first day of a new week. It is our 3rd and final hour on this Monday on TEL. He is Donnie. I am Ben. Still a ton to break down and preview for Monday Night Football tonight in Dallas. Of course, a game that does not have nearly the luster we probably expected to conclude week number 11 before this year got underway. But we break it down nonetheless. We'll have the prop perspective with Sports Grid's Tom Vecchio later on here in this 3rd and final hour. We'll talk some NBA action on this Monday. We'll look at some college hoops and, of course, the injury insight and analysis with the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, here up next. DRS with a lot of impactful injuries on a Sunday for teams in the hunt down the home stretch.
Yeah, look, it's a war of attrition. A lot of times we talk about in the NFL. You're not going to have that same starting lineup you had in week number 1, certainly in weeks number 11 and 12, let alone the playoffs here. So some of these teams will have to work themselves around it, which includes the San Francisco 49ers on multiple levels here. So we got some pretty good stuff coming up in hour number 3 and maybe some ways to try and make some money on this maybe not exciting pro football game tonight, BWS.
I mean, it's kind of that, right? And it feels like when you look at the spread, when you look at the total, is there value to be had? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe the people can tell us something, DRS. That 7 is now 7.5. The total remains at 41 and a hook. Let's hear from the people. What's the best bet for Monday Night Football in the Lone Star State Showdown? We do that and Fade the Public. At Sports Grid on Twitter, what is the best bet for Monday Night Football? The Texans as a touchdown favorite. It's now tricked up by the hook to 7.5. The Cowboys as a home underdog. The over of 41.5 or staying under, perhaps with limited quarterback play on the side of the Cowboys. Again, at Sports Grid on Twitter, most of the public, DRS, and who could really fault them, saying the Cowboys got no stinking shot. More than 55% of the votes say lay it with the Texans.
And rightfully so. You take a look, even say, well, Donnie, they were competitive. They lost by 6 to the 49ers. They lost by 6 to the Falcons. Yes, at least that was with Dak Prescott for most of those games, if not more. The only game we're going off of here is a 34-6 spiking at home. And also, many people would say, and rightfully so, hey, man, you're a better football team at home. Is that the case with the Dallas Cowboys? Every time they take home field there at Jerry World, they get smashed by more and more margin. It feels like every single week. So for me, I can't fault the public, and I was with them. And also the key numbers, right? 7 as opposed to 7.5. 55% of the people voting for the Texans here in that spot, and there's no fault for me. Hey, look, if Cooper Rush turns back into the Cooper Rush of a couple years ago, where Dallas was a better football team around him and can operate from the pocket, that's different. And quite frankly, that's sort of what I expected against the Eagles. Not that they could beat the Eagles, but be competent. I even bet Cooper Rush to throw for over 200 yards in that game when, as soon as I saw like the first 2 or 3 passes, I knew I was in trouble. And even though the Eagles and Jalen Hurts tried to let the Cowboys back into the game early, the dam just broke because the offense was so bad. So if we have C.J. Stroud coming into this game and just saying, you know what, I don't have to make heroic plays out here, just move the sticks and beat them, that's probably what's going to happen. 55% of the public, I agree. I'm not fading you tonight. I think the Texans -7 is the right one here.
Yeah, me as well. I think I actually lean on the under of 41.5, as I'll discuss that in just a moment. A couple of the trends entering tonight. Again, we said this before the break. Houston with C.J. Stroud as its starting quarterback in the last year and a half, not great covering numbers as a favorite. With all of the tremendous success they have seen immediately in H-Town with C.J. Stroud as a favorite, just 5-9-1 against the spread, 2-4-1 ATS as the favored side in 7 of 10 games this year. But Dallas as a dog with Mike McCarthy, it's been awful. 12-16 against the number. He's a lame duck head coach. He'll be looking for new employment next year as well. The Cowboys did start 3-2. 3 of those 5 victories all on the road. 2 of the 3 of those 5 games with their victories on the road. 2 of the 3 outright as a road underdog. But since that point, they've been a dog 5 more times. They're just 2-5 straight up. 0-5 ATS in those games, all losses as an underdog. There hasn't even been anything to prove that the Cowboys can stay competitive despite what the odds makers might anticipate. And you thought maybe if there was a touchdown spread for the Cowboys to at least keep within margin against their hated rivals, the Eagles, coming in on a 4-game win streak, trying to make things just a little bit upsetting for Philadelphia, nothing. 34-6 was that final. And because the Cowboys can't score and allow everybody to score against them, Mike Zimmer, what an awful debut it's been as a defensive coordinator in Dallas. Second worst scoring unit in all of the NFL, 28.8 points per game. Maybe that leads to a Houston game offensively and going over 41.5 as the Cowboys did in their first 3 home games of the year over. They're 0-4 against the spread, by the way, at home this season. In fact, DRS, I kind of lean under because the Texans defensively have been pretty stout. I don't know what Dallas is going to give you offensively, and Houston has played to the under in 7 of 10 games so far this season.
Yeah, and they probably will play to the under again tonight just because it's not their fault. It's going to be the fault of the Dallas Cowboys. Understand this, too. C.J. Stroud's one of the best young quarterbacks in the game. He's getting back an elite wide receiver tonight. His best friend here. And Mixon has been wonderful already. He's going to run on the ground. And I know you can't just do this week to week in the NFL because it doesn't really translate long term. But let's understand this. We saw the Cowboys play at home against the Philadelphia Eagles and get absolutely bum rushed. Quarterback looked terrible. Backup quarterback looked even worse. Now you're going to go back to last week. You know who should have beat the Lions, who just won a game by damn near 50 points yesterday? It was the Houston Texans without their top wide receiver. I know you can't extrapolate here and move forward and say, well, that just means a victory. But I have no hope tonight for the Dallas Cowboys in being efficient on offense, which is something you need to do to win football games. We'll leave it there. If Dak Prescott was under center, all right, now we're making moves. Yeah. Hey, tight end can be effective. CeeDee Lamb can be effective. Dak might throw an interception or 2, but he'll push the football downfield. Like, what is McCarthy's game plan after what he saw last week? Hey, guys, we're going to surprise the Texans. Cooper, I need you to throw 45 times in this game. No, your only viable option tonight is to say, I don't want to take the Cowboys, but if I take Rico Dowdle over his rushing yards and he gets near or above them, maybe they can be competitive. Tell me this right now, Ben. If Dowdle rushes for 37 yards tonight, is this game not like 24-3? Just being honest, like just talking it through.
Yeah, if he rushes for 57, it could still be the case. Don, the 2 quarterbacks last week for Dallas, as they turned things over to Trey Lance, combined for 49 total passing yards against Philadelphia. It's abysmal. Yeah. There was that 4-game win streak that Dallas went on early in 2022 where Rush filled in for an injured Dak Prescott, and maybe that gives you a little bit of hope they can find that. Cooper Rush's passing yards prop tonight, 175.5. Houston defensively has been pretty stout this year. C.J. Stroud at 241 and a hook. Maybe you look to Stroud with a bounce back. He's had some of the worst career games of his time in the NFL the past month or so, and now he gets back his top target in Nico Collins, who in the first 5 games of this year, fully healthy for Houston, was the NFL's leading receiver. But even there, DRS, I'm not sure I love what the Texans bring into tonight's game as well.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of question marks, and if this was a game on Sunday afternoon, Ben, and we're just going, this would just be, hey, what do you think about this game? It stinks, Texans win, next game here. But it's a primetime game. The people expect us to put out a good effort tonight. There are some keep-up. Yeah. C.J. Stroud should be able to throw for maybe 2 touchdowns tonight. Mixon's probably going to find his pay dirt. If we're getting anything out of Nico Collins and he's as healthy as we believe, he should have 7 catches, 70-plus yards, and a touchdown tonight. Yeah. Everything is coming here for me from a Texans perspective. But as you see that graphic, like Schultz should have a decent game. But see, where do you factor in like Jake Ferguson? Like I always say, like Ben, bad quarterback's best friend is a tight end 5 yards over the middle, which he couldn't even complete passes to last week. So trying to find things here like a needle in the haystack for the Dallas Cowboys tonight on positives.
I think it's a Joe Mixon night. I think Houston will go into Dallas, look like the better team, get out with a victory, not really care if they're not covering as a 7.5-point favorite. Live right here on this Monday on the early line on Sports Grid to preview the Monday night finale, the conclusion of week number 11 with Sports Grid's Tom Vecchio here for those prop perspectives on this Monday TV. Tom, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you for being here.
Of course. I think we're in for a really interesting game tonight. You know, we have the Texans, a team that's kind of been a bit up and down over the past few weeks. And I think they're in a spot where they kind of need to reel things in and kind of right the ship a little bit. And because of that, I think we know what we should be getting from like a real life perspective. But then as we flip to like looking at things from a prop perspective, I'm looking at some of these lines. I'm like, man, these lines are super spot on this week, and it doesn't provide a lot of opportunity to like, oh, I think there's a massive edge. I think there's some really interesting angles to take, especially because we should be expecting Nico Collins back today. I'm ready to get into it.
Yeah, let's dive right in, Vecchio. The warmest seat in the National Football League right now is Mike McCarthy, maybe followed only by Joe Lisi's seat because of Tom's excellence in studio on Thursday night, and that is the insight we continue with here on this Monday morning. Vecchio, perhaps it's not the most illustrious game like we could have anticipated earlier in the season because of the injuries and the woes to this dreadful Dallas team. 7.5-point spread now in favor of the Texans. Total stands at 41.5. You understand how the numbers will factor into the game flow. What are you thinking for tonight?
You know, I'm looking at the spread, and again, from like a real life perspective, we should be expecting the Texans to cover, right? The better team, they're getting a little bit healthier with Nico Collins back, and especially after the game that they had last Sunday, which was horrible. It was great on the defensive perspective, picking off Goff, and then they collapsed. Like, what should be the game plan tonight? The game plan should be like as straightforward as possible. Let's limit the mistakes. Let's get back to what we know works. And ultimately, I think that means a big Joe Mixon game. And considering the lack of offensive potential that the Cowboys have, like seeing what Cooper Rush brings, which is absolutely nothing. Like, this is a game that they should be able to cover if they do have these playoff aspirations and, you know, going deeper into the game. So there's a part of me that wants to take a lot of unders on C.J. Stroud because they don't want to put the ball in his hands that much. They want him to be efficient tonight. I don't expect him to pass for 300 yards because if he's passing for 300 yards, as they say time and time again, that means something's probably going wrong for the Texans, and that means the Cowboys are probably in this game.
Yeah, by the way, like last night, I loved Justin Herbert coming into that game, but they got that built-up lead so much. I'm like, I just need 20 more yards. So you do need a running mate to get some of those big quarterback props, which we saw from both guys. Which brings us to the quarterbacks. Last week, Tom, 205.5, Cooper Rush's number. Didn't even come close to that by a couple hundred yards. He's now in that Justin Fields territory at 173.5. C.J. Stroud, 239.5. And check this out. Cooper Rush, typically the worst quarterbacks have a half of a number that pops up, but they're usually north of minus 200 or higher. Cooper Rush to throw one touchdown pass, a paltry minus 168. C.J. Stroud over 1.5 at a minus 114. I know we talk a lot about C.J. Stroud. The expectations for Cooper Rush are rock bottom. Can he get through these numbers?
He can get through these numbers if he actually starts off looking good and maintains that, because we do have to factor in that like Trey Lance could come in again, right? Like, you know, looking back at Cooper Rush's game log over the past few years when he started, like, yeah, there are some games when he goes for like 220 yards, somewhere around there. Like, that's if they get the offense moving early. If there's any point, especially if it starts off slow, 3 and outs, they're just not moving the ball. Like, there's a chance that we see literally every under on Cooper Rush hit, under on attempts, completions, yards, et cetera, et cetera. We see him throw a pick. Look, they may just bring in Trey Lance. Like, that is a very realistic outcome tonight. So I ultimately want no part of going to any Cooper Rush props. Like, I just don't want to do that. I'm not trusting the Cowboys. I barely trust them to begin with. I'm not going to be trusting Cooper Rush. I think C.J. Stroud is super interesting because a part of me wants to take under on his attempts tonight because, again, they want to reel things in tonight. They want to get back to what works. That's Joe Mixon having 20-plus carries tonight. Like, C.J. Stroud could be very effective tonight. I should say not effective, but efficient tonight. Like, they want him to move the ball. Let's pick up some first downs. Let's get Nico Collins back involved. And that may mean under on his yards, under on his attempts, because they're not going to be, you know, looking to have him sling the ball after, you know, last Sunday's performance.
I don't want to say it's been a sophomore slump so far for C.J. Stroud, who dazzled everybody in his rookie season. Just hasn't been incredibly as efficient. We've seen some performances out of Stroud this year that we did not in his rookie campaign. So I would agree, Vecchio. We've also seen Dallas get absolutely thrashed at home early and often in their 4 home games this year. C.J. Stroud, 51.5. First quarter passing yards prop, just the spread for the first half, 3.5 in favor of the Texans. Vecchio, you've already made mention to it. They want C.J. Stroud to be efficient, but they want to trust in Joe Mixon. It maybe the only reliable offensive player right now for Dallas is, I guess, when you look at it, Rico Dowdle, because we can at least trust that when the ball's in his hands, he's going to do something positive. Maybe. When you look at the running backs tonight, Vecchio, where do you begin?
I think it has to be Joe Mixon, and his touchdown odds are super juiced. I don't necessarily want to be going there. I think there's some ways to work him into an SGP. You think that the Texans will win. He'll get a touchdown, 70-plus yards. Like, keeping it really, really simple. When it comes to Rico Dowdle, what we get from him, I think, directly impacts CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, what we're going to be getting from them. Because if we see him go over his rushing attempts, we may not be seeing a massive volume of yards from the receiving. If Cooper Rush can't pass for 100 yards, all these players are going to be hitting their unders. So you have to kind of pick and choose what you expect the Cowboys to do. And that's probably not a whole lot of passing. It's probably more on the ground game for them. Like, they don't want this game to turn into a shootout. Like, that's also the point I want to make. Like, if this game turns into a shootout, I think the Texans win going away.
Now, if we look at one market, because you do get depressed numbers in a game we don't think is a lot of points here. If we remove Joe Mixon from the equation, anytime touchdown scoring market, and let's focus here on the Dallas Cowboys, who would that be? Would it be Dowdle, who clearly is going to get the goal line carries if they make it to the goal line? Can CeeDee Lamb bust out Ferguson over the middle? Who's your look from a Dallas perspective to score tonight?
It would be Ferguson, right? I just want to go for the longest odds. Like, we never get CeeDee Lamb's touchdown odds at this point, right? Like, we know that. He's often sitting at like minus 110, plus 100. But I think Ferguson would be that player just going for the longest odds. That kind of consistent, safe underneath when we're not seeing these super deep shots downfield, potentially to CeeDee Lamb. Like, Ferguson could be that safety net for Cooper Rush.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so as well. But Vecchio, with the Texans getting Nico Collins back tonight, his first time since week 5, we heard from Dr. Chow. He expects Nico Collins to hit the ground running tonight. Where do you think his value lies then in the prop market?
You could go to him for a touchdown. I think that's certainly fine. I like Collins over 5.5 receptions. You're getting a little bit of plus 108. I did say I like C.J. Stroud under attempts, so it's kind of a little bit counterintuitive that Collins would have all these receptions. But Stroud still goes under. Obviously, take it for what it will. So I do like him over the receptions. I also like him over his longest reception of 25.5 yards. He had 26 yards, longest reception in every single game. He still leads the Texans in receiving yards despite missing all those games. He had 8 targets or more in the first 4 games. The 5th game, he was injured with only 2. We see multiple games of him picking up 7, 8, 9 receptions, over 100 yards. So Nico Collins has the chance to be that number 1 receiving option, and he still is despite missing all that time. So if you want to take over on receptions, over on longest, over on just yards, because maybe he ends with 4 receptions and then he has these monster breakoffs with this, massive ADOT that he has, getting these 25-plus receptions, and he still goes under his receptions but goes over his yards, and then we see Joe Mixon involved. I think there's a number of different ways, but Collins' receptions and longest reception are my 2 favorites tonight.
You saw Joe Mixon there under 2.5 receptions at a big game on the ground. 20.5, the attempts prop for Mixon, a number he has gone over with at least 24 in 4 consecutive games for Houston. Vecchio, even for Nico Collins, in a game where he injured his hamstring, he had a 67-yard touchdown catch that led to the injury. He was sensational.
Right, that's what we should be seeing from him. Like, if he breaks off 3-4 long receptions and still hits the under receptions, that's why there's a different, number of different ways to approach it. Like I said, for Mixon, I like the under his receptions. I just don't expect him to play a big role in the passing game. And then his attempts for rushing, I think, is super strong. The one game that he didn't have, like you said, 4 straight, was the first game back from injury against the Patriots. So I think this is a big Joe Mixon game as well.
Completely agree, Vecchio. We appreciate the time as always. Thank you for the proper perspective on this Monday. More from Monday night next. Monday Night Football, the conclusion of week number 11 around this 2024 NFL season. An all-Texas tussle tonight in Dallas between the Cowboys who are looking awful in the Houston Texans, trying to get back in the win column after losing a game at home in primetime last week in which the opposing quarterback threw 5 interceptions. Now, Houston is 6-4 in first place in the AFC South, but they have not looked overly impressive. The spread tonight, DRS, against this dreadful Dallas team would indicate the Texans should roll comfortably, laying 7.5, total at 41 and a hook. Will Houston do just that? Will Houston head into Big D and blow out the boys tonight?
I think they win. I think they win and cover tonight. And the reason being is how bad the Cowboys' expectations on offense are. Where the one good thing you can say is finally they said Rico Dowdle's our starting running back. No more of this Zeke nonsense. He's going to get the lion's share. But how much is the lion's share tonight? Because you have to also factor this in. They were so embarrassing last week on offense. Like, even if they get down 2 touchdowns, Ben, typically in a game, let's just say with the Cincinnati Bengals, like, okay, you know what? Let's lean on our top wide receivers and our all-world quarterback to get back in this football game. Dallas might be so far gone, which means 2 touchdowns down in the second half and still trying to establish the running game because that's all they have and can lean on at this point. That's what I'm trying to factor in. But also understand this. If this Texans team came in over the past couple weeks, if they still had Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, and also Nico Collins fully healthy, they would look a lot different here. And also keep in mind, they lose that game to the Jets. We say, well, the Jets are bad. I loved the Jets in that football game because it was the worst travel spot you could possibly have for a banged-up Houston Texans team. And last week, they should have beat the Lions without Nico Collins in their home building and a Lions team that just eviscerated Jacksonville by close to 50 points yesterday. This Texans team is really good at the quarterback position and has a solid enough defense to slow down a bad offense. If Nico Collins, as we just talked to Doc, and I loved it too, they kept him out last week knowing he was healthy just to make sure he was extra healthy because the bigger prize is winning the division and doing damage in the playoffs. If Nico is as good as Nico Collins was before the injury, why can't he get 100 yards tonight and just wreak havoc on that secondary? I just don't see any positives coming from Dallas other than I think Rico Dowdle is going to get the lion's share at running back. That's it.
It would have to defy Dallas tonight, Cooper Rush tonight. It would have to defy every single thing we have seen this year. Sometimes in the betting landscape, that does happen. All the numbers should back Houston and the Texans tonight when it comes to spread, keeping this game under because the Cowboys can't do anything with a team total tonight of 16.5 points with Cooper Rush's props, with Rico Dowdle's props, with CeeDee Lamb's props. All of that should be dead unders for the Cowboys. But sometimes things get a little bit wonky in a prime time spot. I am not anticipating it, thus I would not bet it. If it happens, all right. That's why I wouldn't mind betting the under 41.5 or Cowboys team total under 16.5, knowing that I believe I have a favorable ticket. If it loses, it loses. But I feel uneasy about it, so I will bet this wager down. I do think there are some better wagers, DRS, and I think that starts in the prop market. Let's compare those quarterbacks tonight. C.J. Stroud, 241 and a hook. The numbers that you alluded to do not be mean to Justin Fields, but emblematic of those prices, 175 and a half. We're not buying into Cooper Rush. Again, if it happens, it happens. Are we buying in, though, to C.J. Stroud bouncing back from a bad second half last week in the defeat against Detroit?
And again, we just had Tom on. It's tough because you don't have to do too much if you're the Texans tonight. Now, if you bet C.J. Stroud and Dallas Cowboys come out on the first drive, 7 plays, 68 yards and a touchdown, like you're doing jumping jacks saying, oh my goodness, like I'm going to get a game where at least I'm going to know my quarterback is going to be throwing from the first quarter all the way through to the fourth quarter. But understand this too. The tough part about backing Cooper Rush, 177.5 is a ridiculously low number in a game you figure a team is going to be trailing by. Because quarterbacks, at least NFL quarterbacks, and they're in the NFL for a reason, are supposed to be able to dink and dunk their way against, prevent defenses over the final quarter to pick up an extra 60, 70, 80 yards, which is like, hey, can I get through my 300? No, you can get through basically 175. But here's the issue. You could be down 14-3 at the half and still be in the football game, and Dallas goes up. Time to go to the backup quarterback again like we saw the last week against the Philadelphia Eagles because it can't be any worse. So you're fighting that uphill battle, and you're also talking about a touchdown prop bet. A half a touchdown for a pro quarterback in his home building with CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver, and you're going like, I don't know if I can take that at minus 168. Like, if you want a pain bet, that's your bet right there. Because what is your final score? We just saw the team total here at the FanDuel Sportsbook, which I do think is a little bit high at 16.5. Ben, that factors in 2 touchdowns in this game. Are you telling me Dallas scoring 2 rushing touchdowns and Cooper Rush isn't going to throw one? So just looking at the odds market, it should make sense to take Cooper Rush over a touchdown, but he was so abysmal last week that it's hard to swallow a minus 168 for 1 touchdown pass in your own building?
Yeah. The Texans right now have gone under an 8 of 10 games. The defense has been pretty consistent and stout. Cooper Rush should have had a touchdown pass to CeeDee Lamb last week if it wasn't for that damn sun in the Star inside AT&T Stadium. DRS, I do believe it's a big Joe Mixon game. We gave you some of the numbers. He has gone over 20.5 rush attempts in 4 consecutive games with at least 24. In fact, in games he has been fully healthy this season for Houston. He has had at least 106 scrimmage yards in every one of those games. I believe now 6 fully healthy games this season for Joe Mixon. That's where I am going to back it here. Not last week. I misspoke there. Only 46 yards on the ground, 44 receiving, but they still ran it 25 times, and you could see there was a clear frustration for this Texans rushing offense not being able to get after Dallas. I'm going to go over 89.5 rushing yards for Joe Mixon tonight.
Yeah, and even if you wanted to sort of lower that down where it doesn't get near 100, Ben, maybe take like 60 or 70 yards, but pair it up at a minus 170 price for a touchdown. Because I do believe Mixon finds pay dirt. But again, people sort of struggle like, it's minus 170. Rather take a guy around the plus 100 number. I agree with. So if you think Mixon's going to get 50-plus yards and a touchdown, that probably equates to somewhere around plus money at that point. That's the way I would indicate, because the goal line carriers are going to Mixon. We know that. It's just a matter of how much do you want to run Mixon in a game that you might be already comfortable by the break, and maybe Nico Collins does the damage. There's a lot of ways to think your way through this one. No help to the Dallas Cowboys. Thank you.
Nico Collins, longest reception, already on its way up of 26.5. We expect him to be fully healthy and a key component of this Texans offense once again. DRS, enjoy the show tonight. We shall talk on Thursday, my friend. More on the early line. Comes your way next.